Jim Callahan took the lighthouse job to disappear. The tower stood alone on a jagged reef off the Northern California coast, surrounded by cold, black water that never seemed to rest. For the first month, life was quiet and predictable. Jim checked the fuel tanks every morning, cleaned the massive Fresnel lens, and listened to the steady hum of the generator. The ocean was violent, but honest. It did not pretend to be anything else. The scratching began on the 32nd night. It came from the steel door at the base of the tower, long, slow sounds like heavy claws dragging across metal. Then a single, deliberate knock. The pattern repeated, unchanging. Jim checked the time the first night it happened, 3:14 a.m. He assumed it was debris or pressure from the waves. The next night, it happened again. Same sound, same rhythm, same time. By the end of the week, Jim was awake before it started. His body learned the moment even when his clock was out of sight. The scratching never varied, never rushed, never grew frantic. It sounded patient, expectant. Jim tried to ignore it and focus on work, but strange details began to surface. While cleaning the air vents, he found thin, translucent scales caught in the filters. They shimmered faintly green and felt icy to the touch. When he handled them, his fingers tingled, numb and electric at the same time. He washed his hands and told himself it was corrosion, salt buildup, stress. The fog worsened. Some days, the lighthouse felt sealed inside a gray wall with no horizon. The mainland vanished entirely. The scratching grew louder, closer, no longer echoing through steel, but vibrating through the structure itself. Unable to sleep, Jim turned to the old logbooks kept in the tower's library. Many were water damaged, pages swollen and stuck together. As he read, a pattern emerged. Multiple keepers described the scratching. Every entry marked the same time, 3:14 a.m. Several logs ended abruptly, mid-sentence. Others ended calmly, almost clinically. One name appeared again and again, Sully. Sully had been the keeper before Jim. He vanished 18 months earlier. His final entries were detailed, obsessive. Sully wrote that the lighthouse's heat created a pocket of warmth in an otherwise freezing ocean. Deep-sea organisms, adapted to pressure and darkness, were drawn to it, not as predators, as dependents. According to Sully, ocean currents shifted every night at 3:14 a.m., causing a sudden drop in temperature around the reef. That was when the creatures rose to the tower, clinging to it for heat. Sully also wrote something worse. The lighthouse didn't just attract the creatures, it prepared the keeper. The heat, the chemicals in the vents, the residue in the water supply slowly altered the human body. Bones softened, skin adapted, eyes changed. The process ensured that when a keeper finally encountered the creatures, resistance was no longer possible. Jim stopped reading when his hands began to ache. The storm arrived in mid-October. Waves slammed into the base of the tower hard enough to shake the walls. While inspecting the basement, Jim found the fuel line ruptured, not cracked, bitten. Serrated teeth marks were pressed into solid copper. As his flashlight swept the room, he saw movement between the tanks. Something pale, thin, and wrong slid out of view with unnatural smoothness. That night, the generator failed. The lighthouse went dark. The silence was immediate and crushing. Without the hum of the machinery, Jim could hear the ocean breathing below him. Then, the steel door at the bottom of the tower gave way with a wet, grinding sound. Footsteps began climbing the spiral staircase, slow, heavy, certain. Jim grabbed a crowbar and retreated to the lantern room. His grip felt weak. The metal felt heavier than it should have. When the first shape emerged from the stairwell, its skin pulsed with dull green light. As it stepped closer,
Jim saw the tattered flannel shirt hanging from its frame. A rusted name tag was still pinned to the chest. Sully. Sully's eyes were too large, black and reflective. His fingers were webbed. His body had been reshaped to survive crushing depths. Jim tried to raise the crowbar. His hands trembled. The muscles refused to respond the way they should have. Jim looked down and saw scales forming along his knuckles. The truth became unavoidable. Fighting wasn't an option. Jumping into the ocean would be death. Even if he killed this one creature, the tower was already surrounded. Sully's logs had been clear. Every keeper who resisted died quickly. Every keeper who maintained the light survived long enough to complete the transformation. Sully stepped forward and placed a cold, damp hand over Jim's on the emergency crank. It wasn't an attack, it was guidance. The creatures needed the light, the tower needed a keeper, and Jim's body was already changing to fulfill that role. Together, they turned the crank. The backup system ignited. The lighthouse erupted with blinding white light. Outside, unseen shapes clung to the tower, releasing a low collective hiss as warmth returned to the water. As dawn broke, Jim leaned against the glass. The sun rose over the ocean, but he felt nothing from it, only cold. When the supply boat arrived days later, the crew found the lighthouse fully operational. The engines were running, the lens was clean. On the galley floor lay a neatly folded set of clothes. The logbook was open, filled with steady handwriting. Jim had recorded the facts, the currents, the time, the cycle. The lighthouse was not a warning, it was a system, and the system was still working.